Historic Park House Museum in Amherstburg, and we're going to show you a few cooking techniques and some of the implements that were used in the 18th and 19th century. We're going to take you around the kitchen and show you what was used and how they used it.
This is a typical representation of a hearth that would have been commonly seen in the home during the late 18th and early 19th century.
And this is a simplified version of the hearth, typically found at British forts.
In the 18th and 19th century, the fire was the main heating source for cooking. Tinder, flint and steel were used to ignite the fire. Hardwood was the best. Examples: ash, red oak, white oak, beech, birch, aspen, hickory, basswood, hard maple, pecan, or dogwood. Coals are actually what you want. It's not the flame that counts, it's the amount of coals for the cooking. Once the fire was lit, it's time to start cooking. I'm going to take you for a quick tour around the kitchen. Over here we have a typical 18th, early 19th century breadboard. This is what you would have used to knead your bread on. Moving over here we have a mortar and pestle, used commonly to mash up spices or nuts. This would have been for grating. Here we actually have some nutmeg that's been grated. You just want to make sure not to grate your thumbs. Moving over we have our sugar, which was of course imported.
During the 18th, 19th, and into the 20th century, a lot of houses didn't have indoor plumbing, so they would have had something called a dry sink. This particular piece here is a cabinet. Would have had your wash containers on top. All water would have had to have been brought into the house, either with buckets or with jugs from the well outside. So you would have used this to do all of your washing, whether it was dishes, sometimes even to a degree laundry.
Pot here is actually a typical representation of a pot which would have been used for boiling. So you would have placed the water in the pot. It was then pushed back into the fire and placed on an S-hook.
Next we're going to show you the crane, which is a large iron bracket that's hinged to one side of the fireplace, from which the cook could hang her pots over the fire. It swung back and forth like a gate, facilitating the hanging, removal, and tending of the cooking fire.
This is a trammel.
It was an adjustable pot hook that was used for hanging cooking pots over a fire at different heights from the lug puller crane we showed you earlier. Pot hooks were heavy, wrought iron hooks for hanging implements such as pots from the crane. The popular configuration for these devices was shaped them like the letter S. The hooks of this design were also called S-hooks. A number of these could be linked together to form a chain to adjust the hanging pot's distance from the fire, thus its cooking temperature. Called a reflector oven, was a cylindrical tin box open on one side, or in this case a rectangular one. Its shiny surfaces reflected the fire's heat onto the sides of the food, not directly facing the fire. The clever device came in two versions. Simpler version was for baking and had a shelf intersecting its center for pies. The more complicated version, for roasting, came equipped with a spit instead of a shelf. In addition to the spit, they had a spout for pouring off drippings as they accumulated, and a door in the back reflecting panel so the cook could check the progress of a roast without disturbing its position on the hearth.
This is a typical Dutch oven or a bake oven, depending on if you were British or American.
Normally this would be used for, you could use it for stews, but you can also use it for baking. Inside you would have put a trivet in the bottom of the Dutch oven. So then you could raise whatever you were cooking, if it was in a pan or in a bowl, a little bit above to allow heat to circulate through. We'll show you what a trivet is shortly.
I'm going to show you now how to use this. Scoop your coals. To preheat your Dutch oven, you would have placed coals around the base of the Dutch oven or bake oven. And taken your ash shovel, coal shovel, and placed coals on top.
This is a griddle. Not all griddles were designed for hanging from the crane, but most were. Griddles were used for baking biscuits, muffins, small cakes, and pancakes, and for general sautéing. Most hanging griddles had feet so they could stand independently on the hearth. Other griddles, designed solely for use over coals on the hearth, usually had a single pot-like handle rather than a bail.
This is a toasting fork. It's a large, long-handled, two-tined fork with some small legs. It supported a tidbit of meat or bread to be cooked or toasted before the fire. The ends of the fork tines were often curved upwards so that the food would not fall off.
This particular style of roasting spit would attach to a nest hook on your crane. Your meat would have suspended down from the bottom, and this little trapdoor would have opened, and a key would have been inserted, so you would crank the key, causing the meat to rotate continually.
This is a frying pan. It's a shallow, flat-bottomed, long-handled pan for frying food. It sat over the coals on a specially designed trivet with a mobile arm that supported its long handle.
Kitchen. Thank you very much for coming. We hope you enjoyed our lecture today. If you have any questions or anything like that, we'll be answering them shortly.
Bye!